So I'm wondering how you evaluate the claim of genocide.
Well, I mean, it's a legal term. I'm not a lawyer. I think you can look at what's happened. Several things have happened. Firstly, Israel tried to push the population out of the Gaza Strip, and it got Tony Blinken to run around as its errand boy to Egypt, to Jordan, and Saudi Arabia in the first weeks of the war to get them to accept people that Israel would drive out of the Gaza Strip. These governments refused, but that was the intention. So expelling population might or might not fall into the definition of genocide, but all are part of the, if I remember the language of the Genocide Convention, it talks about doing certain things to all or part of a population. Second thing that happened was that Israel declared that it would cut off food, water, electricity, fuel, medical supplies, anything to the Gaza Strip, which meant that they were, in effect, threatening to and ended up doing something that led to almost starvation situation. The third thing they did was to attack infrastructure. And this has nothing to do with human shields, which is the excuse for killing large numbers of people. Oh, there was a Hamas person here, we'll kill 800 or 200 or 50 people in order to kill this person. They destroyed the water purification plants. They destroyed the sewage system, the sewage plants, the sewage treatment plants. They destroyed the electrical grid. They destroyed the internet. They prevented food and water from coming in or electricity from coming in from Israel. This led to what you see in the Gaza Strip, which is famine, which is people dying of diseases, the spread of things like polio and all kinds of other diseases. Is this genocidal? Well, in a sense, you can argue they haven't killed all the people of Gaza. They've only killed maybe 40, 50,000, about 42,000, and undoubtedly more under the ruins, and more will probably die in the years to come of diseases, of untreated wounds, and other things. Is that genocide? I would leave it to a lawyer. I would have no trouble calling it genocide myself. I think you have statements by Israeli leaders from Netanyahu on down, the Minister of Defense, Gallant, the Prime Minister, generals, and others, who've said things that clearly indicate genocidal intent. There is a provision of international humanitarian law that for military objectives for military actions to be legal, they have to be proportional and they have to be discriminate. And those actions have not been proportional or discriminate. If you kill 100 people in order to kill a Hamas leader, this is neither proportional nor discriminate. And they've done this again and again and again and again and again. This claim of human shields is a violation of international humanitarian law. These are at the very least war crimes without any possible, I mean, there are Israeli lawyers who will defend it, and they're distorting in a grotesque manner international law, in my opinion. I'm not a lawyer, but that seems pretty clear to me as is for doing that. The entire population of the Gaza Strip is not Hamas. The entire population of the Gaza Strip did not attack on the 7th of October. The overwhelming majority of the population of the Gaza Strip are children who have nothing to do with Hamas or politics or killing of anybody. And those are the people who are being slaughtered. Women. Hamas doesn't include any women fighters. So we're talking about people who cannot possibly be adjudged to be responsible for what happened, in addition to old people and civilians who have nothing to do with Hamas. The second thing is, people say, well, they're all Hamas. Well, actually, 43% of Palestinians, or 44%, voted for Hamas in 2006. And any opinion poll that you look at before October 7th for Gaza shows that large numbers of Gazans opposed Hamas. It was an authoritarian regime that was unpopular with apparently most Gazans, even before. So saying we can attack the civilians because they're all Hamas, these are war crimes. There's just no justification. There's no sense of proportionality. And I think that what Israel has done, moving people again and again and again, is essentially collective punishment. Whatever excuses are given, whatever pretexts are offered, whatever ludicrous human shield arguments, which in and of themselves are violations of international humanitarian law, there's no sense in what Israel has done is proportional. You may argue, well, the trauma inside Israel created by October 7th created a desire for retaliation. That's an explanation. But that doesn't mean it's proportional. That doesn't mean it fits within the framework of international humanitarian law.
I found this podcast debate-ish video online recently and found it very interesting and informative and figured I'd share it with you with the highlights. So if you like videos like this, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Now let's continue.
Do you think that no matter how incommensurate with the initial attack Israel's response has been, it will succeed in eliminating Hamas if that is one of its primary objectives?
Israel has, since its creation, believed, or Israeli leaders since the creation of Israel, have believed that only force and imposing what Israel wants to impose on the Palestinians will work. Now, there are some Israeli leaders who differed with that. Rabin, Olmert, Barak. But basically, with those and a few other exceptions, Moshe Sharet earlier on in the 50s, with a few exceptions, it's force and more force. And if that doesn't work, use more force. That is in my view, suicidal policy. You cannot, in the 21st century, treat a population in that manner. They've done it. And they've succeeded because the United States has not only allowed them to do it, helped them to do it, armed them to do it. But that's not going to solve Israel's problems. So whatever they did after the 7th of October was a continuation of a policy which is intended to impose realities on the Palestinians and force them to accept things that they're not going to accept. I mean, anybody who looks at Palestinian politics, society, history is going to tell you they're still there. They're still going to resist. You have to come to terms with them some way. And that does not involve via the barrel of a gun or the bombs dropped from an F-15. So, resolving a problem caused by ethnic cleansing and caused by driving these people into the Gaza Strip and making them hate you is not going to be caused by killing 42,000 of them. You're just creating more problems. I would say the same thing about the war in Lebanon. Israel created Hezbollah. I didn't say that. Ehud Barak said that when he was defense minister. And he was right. There was no such thing as Hezbollah when Israel invaded in 1982. It was a result of the war. And Hamas is a result of occupation, of humiliation, of dispossession, and of a deprival of rights. There have been various forms Palestinian resistance has taken, armed and unarmed. Hamas represents the most extreme form. But you do this to people and you're going to get this, sooner or later, a reaction. And so you're asking me, is it proportional? Not only is it not proportional, in my view, it's not even rational. From an Israeli perspective, in terms of what I would argue they should see as their interests. I'm not talking of international humanitarian law or a Palestinian perspective. One of them you mentioned, the destruction of Hamas. Hamas is a political movement that exists wherever there are Palestinians. The idea that you can destroy Hamas by some military action in the Gaza Strip is worse than absurd. It's ludicrous. It's one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard. You can possibly defeat Hamas's military forces in the Gaza Strip, but to destroy Hamas is a political movement, a social movement, a religious movement, and it's an idea. And it exists everywhere that there are Palestinians. It's not a majority necessarily, though it's become more popular with some Palestinians and less popular with others as a result of the last year of war. Finally, I would go to something that Henry Kissinger said. If an unconventional force can avoid complete defeat, it wins. If a conventional army doesn't achieve an absolute victory, it loses. And so the Israeli military has entered into a situation where ultimately they can't really win, even in military terms, as long as resistance continues. I would say that I wouldn't be able to predict where we're going. I don't know, but where it looks like on today, what is today, the 3rd of October, I would say things look really grim for Palestinians and the Gaza Strip. I think they face a miserable future for years to come.
I actually agree with this, unfortunately, especially with Trump being president. And there is a part of me that thinks that Trump's unpredictability could be a good thing for Palestinians. It does seem that he's basically willing to give up Gaza and the West Bank. That's just my personal perspective from what I'm seeing in the news. I hope that's not the case, but yeah, unfortunately.
I would say the situation of Lebanon is awful and probably going to get worse. And I think the region, I don't know where it's going to go. We could be facing a much more serious regional conflict. We already are in one. Ever since Israel started attacking Tehran and killing Palestinian leaders here and Lebanese leaders there, we went to another level of conflict. And Iran has been responding with these rockets fired on two major occasions now from Iran, not by proxies, not from Iranian militias or the Ansar Allah, the so-called Houthis in Yemen, or Hezbollah, but directly from Iran. We're in a new phase. Where it goes, I don't know. Now, the governments of Western countries are continuing to support Israel. Our elites in our universities and corporations and media continue to support Israel. So there's not going to be a change as far as I can tell. But Israel has lost public opinion the world over and in the West. And that the West is the metropole of this project. I mean, Israel is a thriving entity. It's a nation state. It's a regional nuclear superpower, yada, yada, yada. All of that's true. But it's entirely dependent on the United States and Western Europe for certain things. Its major trading partner is Europe, the EU. The United States supplies it with its weapons. You don't have American and European support, you can't do what you're doing. And they're threatening the very basis of that support by basically thumbing their nose at public opinion the world over. You see the way that...
Yeah, there's only so long that will last. Like, I get it that the money they have, they're able to just say, screw the public opinion. But it's true that public opinion has never shifted this much, in my opinion, at least in my lifetime. So something big is going to happen, and things are going to change, especially with the next generation.
that Israeli leaders treat the United Nations. Well, the United Nations represents public opinion in the world. So I would say, not only do I not see this as coming out well for them in terms of the specifics of Gaza or the specifics of Lebanon, I would say that globally, Israel's put itself in a terrible, terrible position. Had they accepted a ceasefire the ceasefire Biden offered months ago, had they accepted the ceasefire that Biden suggested for Lebanon weeks ago, they would be in a marginally better position today. Were they to accept one tomorrow, they would be in a marginally better position. But it does not seem that that's the way things are going. I don't know. I'm not predicting the future, but the way things have gone up to now make me think that they won't take that offering. They argue there's only one people here. Only the Jewish people have the right of national self-determination in the land of Israel by Israeli law, by a basic law that has constitutional force. Well, if you say that, there's no middle ground. We will ground you out. We will destroy you because you don't exist. You don't have a right to exist. That's not just some far-right lunatic Israeli politician. That is a basic law passed by an overwhelming majority of the Israeli Knesset in 2018. They're going to have to get over that things and have to come to an understanding that somehow or other there are two peoples here, and they have to figure out how they're going to live in this single land. And it cannot be by the supremacy of one people over another, which is what Zionism argues for. It doesn't argue for an Arab-Jewish state. It doesn't argue for a...
I wish I knew more about this guy. He seems very intellectual and very, very eloquent in his speech. And I just wanted to say that if you do enjoy videos like this, where I watch a whole podcast and find the best highlights and put them into a short video that you can watch without wasting too much of your time, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Obviously, in case you haven't noticed, I have been feeling pretty sick, but I love doing what I do on YouTube, and I hope many of you appreciate it. Subscribe to my channel. Only about 4.5% of all of my viewers subscribe, so let's get that number up. Thank you.
Shared democratic state. It argues for a Jewish state in a majority Arab country. You can't do that. It's not, you could have done it in 1800 or 1700. You can't do that in 2024. And they have to come to terms with that. That's not an easy thing.